Okay, so we'll go with Plato today. We were doing Plato's ideal is the real. Um, did I do this with you? This particular topic, which is not Plato's influences. All that is. Uh, did I do the allegory of the cave? Allegory of the cave. Does anyone remember? Okay, so let's do that.
Paka.
Um, when Plato says the ideal is the real, he is going by the idea of perfection. For him, like Parmenides, anything that moves is imperfect, and therefore it is not to be studied, because as Parmenides had said, if you remember, the way of the truth and the way of the appearances. Plato doesn't actually use these words, but the way of appearances is something that he does talk about. And for him, these appearances are not real. Then what is the real? The question is then the answer to that question about what is the real is that the ideal is the real. Sorry. The ideal is the real. So if you look at this particular perception, we have to try and understand as to how or what exactly does Plato mean when he says this. I remember definitely having done the realm of the forms with you. Do you remember this, anyone? Okay, it's been a long time. So Akshita remembers. Okay. Um, the realm of the forms is where the soul goes. This is the Pythagorean influence, that there are souls, and that these souls, after they die, after, a human being dies, the soul doesn't die. The soul goes to the realm of the forms, FORMS, and there different souls basically uh, exchange different kinds of ideas, different kinds of knowledge. They exchange them. So in that particular way, Plato says when we are born, we are not born with an empty mind. We are born with knowledge in our mind. Okay, we are born with knowledge in our mind. Now how to get rid of this. Yeah. We are born with a mind that already has knowledge, as a soul that has gone through various cycles of death and birth. So that is the form of the, that is where, that is what he means when he talks about the realm of the forms. So for him, the form of the human being is the soul. And the soul, only in the case of Plato, only in the case of Plato, you can talk about it as the mind as well. Okay, when you're born with a mind, and that is the soul. Don't use this mind soul thing with everyone else. This is something that only Plato says. So all knowledge for him is inborn or innate, innate. Now, after having said this, Plato says that knowledge of the world, the ephemeral world in which we live, is not true knowledge. True knowledge is basically that which is there by birth itself. And in order to demonstrate his point, he gives us what, before I talk about that, I must tell you one more thing, and that is, for him, anything that moves is not something which is perfect. And Plato aimed at perfection. For him, everything has to be perfect. Only then it is knowledge. Uh, so he basically gives us an example, his own example. Allegory of the cave is what he calls it. The allegory of the cave is that he's talking about a few people living in a cave, never coming out. Okay, they live in the cave. The cave is what their world is. Now, the cave has crevices, it has holes, it has all kinds of openings through which light comes into the cave. When light comes into the cave, Plato says that this light brings with it the, uh, what do you say, brings with it the whole world of outside, its shadows, it brings in. So it brings in shadows of trees, it brings in shadows of boulders, it brings in number of different shadows. Now, for the people living in the cave, they are not aware of the external world. External world is the world outside of the cave. So when they see the shadow of a tree, they think that it is the real tree. When they look at uh, the shadow of a boulder, They think that is the real boulder. So here, Plato makes a distinction. The distinction is between the actual and the real. So for him, the shadows represent what is called the actual. Okay? And the tree whose shadow it is the real. But for the people in the cave, they start thinking that what they are seeing as actual, they start thinking is the real. That's what he says. Okay, so it is a misleading thing to go in search of knowledge with the outside world. For him, the outside world is full of imperfections and it moves because it is trying to move towards perfection. And Plato believes that human beings can contribute to the, what should we say, to the hastening of the process of having the real world and not the actual world. So for him, everything that emanates from the mind is perfect. Everything that is out there in the world is imperfect. And like I said, it is the imperfection that makes the world move. Now, if you ask Plato, giving his own example, or Plato asks us, actually, I put it in the reverse. Sorry about that. Which is the perfect horse? He asks this question. Any number of uh, any number of what should I say? Um any number of horses, empirical horses, that means the horses that you see in flesh and blood, none of these horses are perfect because they have some small defect somewhere. So none of them is perfect. Then the question that we ask is, which is the perfect horse? For Plato, the perfect horse is the idea of the horse. The idea that you have in your mind about a horse, he says that is the perfect horse. Plato was questioned. He said, how do we know? You're saying that knowledge is inborn, innate. It is there in the mind at the time of the birth. Now, how do we know about things that we are seeing unless we see them? So that is when a question is asked. You're saying the perfect horse is the horse that you have in your mind. But if I've never seen a horse, how will I know that I'm seeing a horse? How will I know that I'm seeing a horse? That is the question that somebody asked Plato. Plato's retort to that was, if you don't know what a horse is, how do you know that what you're seeing is a horse? That is a question that Plato asks. How is it that we can say that I know that this is a horse, I'm looking at a horse, unless and until you know what the horse is? So for him, the idea comes first. Material world and its content come later. That is basically what Plato says. So the world is full of actuals, the mind is full of reals. But does it mean that you cannot do anything in this world? Is it something that cannot be improved upon? If it is imperfect and if it is moving towards perfection, who is helping the world move towards perfection? And this part of Plato is, either you take it as, what should I say? Either you take it as shocking, or you can take it as, sorry, yeah, you can take it as arrogance, whatever it is. Plato, I told you while we were talking about the influences, here he draws on Protagoras' idea. Protagoras was a sophist who refused to worship the other Greek gods, meaning Zeus, the head god, Zeus. Zeus, the head god, his children, Apollo, Dionysius, Venus, you can go on, there's so many gods that the Greeks had. So Protagoras did not believe in that. He believed in only one God, who was called Demiurge. 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 Now, in the Greek lore, you will find that Demiurge is not seen positively. Demiurge is seen as an underground figure. He is also seen as somebody who does damage. But Protagoras believed in him. And funnily enough, Plato says the God who is helping the world move towards perfection is Demiurge. So Plato rejects all the other Greek gods, including Sophia, the goddess of learning, on whose name we had the sophists. Sophists as those who worshipped Sophia. So you see, he invokes demiurge. That is a very, very unbelievable or difficult to believe thing, because you are, without any preface, saying that somebody who's treated as a god of the underground is the propelling force of a propelling force that is moving the world from perfection, from imperfection to perfection. So if you look at this, then what you find is that Plato is drawing from many different sources to build his own idea of what is what. Now, if you see what Plato says after this, and after saying that we should move towards perfection, not just in mind, but also in the world that is outside of us. If there is anyone here who's thinking that what is it that Plato means by you're already born with a knowledge in your head. Okay, how can you justify that? How can you justify the realm of forms? So let me give you a 20th century example, an example that is applicable to all of us. This class is being conducted in English. This is not my mother tongue or my father tongue or anyone else's in my family. I'm sure that is the case with all of you. English is not your mother tongue. I am also sure that you are all capable of speaking more than one language. You're capable of speaking more than one language. So if you are capable of speaking more than one language, how do you speak? Let's say, I would assume Shruti Nagpure is she's a Maharashtrian. So the first language she would have learned would be Marathi, because that is the language that she would have been exposed to. She's exposed to that particular language, so she picks up Marathi. But does it stop there? It doesn't. As she grows up, as she goes to school, she picks up other languages. She picks up Hindi, that is taught there. She picks up English that is taught there. So she's multilingual, not one language. Most of us Indians are multilingual. Okay, I myself can speak about 5 languages, at least 2 of which are European. And I've never been to Europe in order to learn those languages. Yet I learned them here in India. So what is facilitating this? So if you take the argument of Noam Chomsky, Chomsky, who's now become a political philosopher, but he originally was a linguistics philosopher. He asks the question, suppose your mother is Spanish, your father is Spanish, but for whatever reasons, you are not brought up by them. You grow up in a house that speaks Marathi. So what language do you learn? You learn Marathi. So a child of 2 Spanish people who grows up in a Marathi household learns Marathi. How is this possible? How is it possible that we are polyglot? Polyglot is knowing many languages. Our ex-Prime Minister, P.V. Narasimha Rao, knew 15 languages, out of which many were foreign languages. So he's truly polyglot. How is this happening? How is this happening? The answer that Chomsky gives is that when we are born with structures of knowledge, sorry, not knowledge, language in our head. All that we need is an external stimulus. That is hearing when you're very small. See, those who are born deaf are also dumb because of the fact that if they can't hear, they can't speak. So Chomsky is not negating the entire argument of, the outside world is necessary. It is necessary to the extent that it has to provide a stimulus. Now he says he's a structuralist. He is called a semiotics person. I'm not going to go into that now and waste valuable time. He says, if you look at this particular thing, now hand over this child who knows Marathi, hand him over to his parents, and he picks up Spanish. So, as a structuralist, Chomsky argues that all languages have only one structure. What we call syntax or grammar, syntax, syntax, is broadly also called grammar. Then you have semantics, semantics. Semantics is understanding, and understanding the meanings of not just words, but even of paintings or carvings. So understanding the meaning behind all those is semantics. Then we have semiotics. Semiotics is understanding sign language. If somebody, let's assume that this is not a virtual classroom like it is now, let me say that this is a regular class and you're all here. Somebody like Prushni Yadav decides, this fellow is speaking nonsense, let me talk to my friend. So she turns and starts talking to her friend. And I say this, everybody understands that as don't speak. And this gesture is an amazing gesture. This one finger. I don't know how many of you have had experiences with dogs, but when a dog is being naughty, okay, or when it is misbehaving, you just have to make a sound, and show the finger. My dogs, when I show the finger, they know what I have said. They come back begging for mercy. So that is semiotics. And that is not something which is only within the human species. It is something which is universal. Symbols are universal. Nobody says this is not stop. This is stop. This is go. You don't have to study these symbols, these basic symbols, in order to understand what somebody is saying. So Chomsky claims that every single one of us has the ability, to become polyglot. And that is only because the structure of language as we understand it is universal. Syntax of different languages, semantics of different languages, and language need not be only spoken. That's why I'm emphasizing on semantics and semiotics. Imagine you go to some place like Coimbatore, you don't know Tamil. Now you're feeling hungry, you're looking for a restaurant, not finding it. So you see somebody coming by, you say, so that person stops. You say, I want food. I want food. Where? Where can I find it? And this fellow says, go straight, first right, third building. That is semiotics. So semiotics is not some esoteric thing. It is something that we do all the time. Semiotics is also a wonderful thing to indulge in copying when doing MCQs. People in my time used to make a code. Semiotics is code actually. The code in an MCQ is A is this, B is this, C is this, D is this. So somebody from the side asks, if A is the answer. If D is the answer, let me get back to it. Do you people still do this? Or was it something that happened only in my time? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So people in MCQs, you do. Akshita says, yes, sir, we do. So semiotics is a very good tool if you are writing an MCQ, multiple choice questions, test. Okay. So sometimes we make a code ourselves, but some codes are universal. For example, in any sport, this is out. In tennis, if somebody says this, it means the ball has gone outside the line. In cricket, if the umpire says this, then you are out. This basically means out, right? So that is the kind of thing that even Plato is talking about. Chomsky is only saying, not because he doesn't want to say more, he is only saying that you can learn several languages, you can learn different kinds of symbols, all of that because of the fact that the structure of language is universal. You may speak different languages which have different sounds, but the way we make those sounds is universal. So Plato was not an idiot. If in the 20th century, Noam Chomsky can say what he did and correctly, he's absolutely right. You can see that there is the possibility that we are born with knowledge. So don't take it as some kind of thing to study only to pass the exam. Think about these things when you have the time. They are fascinating. Then you will become philosophers. And I say it in all seriousness. So Plato, therefore, is saying that this imperfect world can be made perfect through the intervention of demiurge, but he also believes that the ideal polis, not state, please do not use the word state. If you exam, you write whatever you want. For him, the ideal polis is politeia, Politeia, politeia. That is what he's aiming at. He's aiming at the perfect polis, the ideal polis, because the ideas are perfect. He believes that you should not leave the ideas only to be perfect, but you should aid demiurge in also creating a world which is moving faster towards perfection. For him, the beginning of such a process is politeia. So if you live in a polis which is built on ideas, knowledge that came through ideas, and not necessarily through empirical studies. Empirical studies are studying the world as being external to us. He doesn't believe in that. I told you about John Locke. John Locke said we are born with an empty mind. We acquire knowledge of the outside world through our five senses. That is a modern period and its outlook. So Locke's work is the work that is called an essay concerning human understanding is seminal. It's of great value because that is what we do today. Very rarely do you find anyone who believes that you can have things already in your mind. One of the persons who believes that you can have things already in your mind is somebody who comes in the German Enlightenment, and that is Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant basically used the term intuit INTUIT, what we call intuitive, where there is no use of any of the senses. If you can intuit, it basically means that you already know something before it happens, and without the use of any of your senses or any other aid. So if I say tomorrow there will be an earthquake, and there is an earthquake, then that is intuit, intuitive in English. One simple example, when I was teaching in women's college, where I spent half my teaching life, there was one girl, and she had, for some reason, great faith in me. So she said, "Sir, my sister, for some reason, is being very recalcitrant. She's not behaving properly. What do I do?" So I basically said, "I'd like to meet your sister, find out why she's being recalcitrant, not listening to people." And they came home. She brought her younger sister, the one she was concerned about, and she also brought her brother. Before anyone could say anything, I don't know why, I looked at the brother first and I asked him, "Do you have a congenital heart disease?" He said, "Yes." "How do you know?" I said, "I don't know. I just asked." He said, "Yes, I have a congenital heart disease." And then there was this explanation about the sisters. I said, "Stop. Let me ask her a question." The question that I asked her was, "Your problem is with your mother, isn't it? And since you have a problem with your mother, you take out your anger on everyone." She said, "How do you know?" I said, "I don't know how I know." That is intuition, where we don't use our senses, but yet we know something on sight. That is intuition. So Plato is asking for intuition to build the perfect polis, which is the politeia, which I told you is unfortunately translated into English as, what do we say? It's translated into English as uh, republic. There were no republics in ancient Greece. There were only polis. Poleis is the plural of polis, and it is pronounced police, not police. So tomorrow, I think you guys are on holiday now, right? Do you have classes?
No, sir.
No, okay. So let me see. Check the thread once at 12 o'clock. If I'm trying to go back to college tomorrow, I don't know if I'll be able to go. But if I do go, I'll be back by 12. So I'll try to take 2 classes tomorrow so that I can finish this faster. And I also want to do some confusion clarification. Roshni Yadav has some confusions, she said. So I'll meet you tomorrow. Thank you then. Just check the thread for 12 o'clock and 6 again tomorrow. From day after tomorrow, we move to 5:30. Today and tomorrow it's
Sir,
6.
like on Monday, we'll be having 4-1 exams, sir.
Madam, I'm trying to finish the portion that I'm supposed to finish. That's why I'm saying 2 classes. Quickly, I'll finish. And then if you still have any doubts left, you can ask me. I'll be quite happy to clarify them. I am aware of the fact that you people have exams from Mondays. But please believe me, if you really hear me carefully and take notes, you have already studied. If you hear carefully and take notes, you have already studied. You don't need to study anything more about Plato anywhere else, or about Aristotle, about anywhere else. Okay? So see you tomorrow, hopefully in the morning once in the end. And definitely in the evening. Thank you.